And so let me go through some of them, because I think that this is where you begin to define what the research agenda for geodesign could be. One of them is the exponential increase in extinctions going on the planet. As many of you know, biologists such as E.O. Wilson have talked about us being in the midst of the sixth extinction, where 2/3 of all bird, mammal, butterfly, and plant species are expected to be extinct by the end of this century. This is a profound phenomenon that we are in the midst of. And much of this has to do with the fact that we have, and here's some graphing of the kind of exponential decline in the health of species around the planet, including diagrams such as this, which show, for example, global fisheries totally collapsing by 2050. And this has a lot to do with the way we have spatially inhabited our planet. That much of this has to do with polluting, fragmenting the landscape, and introducing invasive species across it. So the way in which we have been designing our landscapes has directly related to the collapse of a number of these ecosystems. And geodesign, I think, has the great potential to help us understand this phenomenon and make design decisions that work counter to it, that in fact preserve habitat, connect habitat, preserve the resources that other species need in order for them to survive, and with their survival for us to survive. Another obvious exponential increase has been carbon accumulation in the atmosphere, which has been triggering global climate change. And here, too, much of the greenhouse gas emission from humans comes from human settlements, from buildings, from transportation systems, from the geographical spread in which we now live, which has contributed to this problem. And over the last many hundred thousands of years are clearly out of sync with any kind of cyclical rise and fall of carbon in the atmosphere. So here, too, I think geodesign has great potential to enable us to begin to make design decisions that are zero carbon in production, that use renewable technologies, and that begin to turn the tide on something that, if we don't, will be incredibly disruptive to our food supplies, our water supplies, and to much of what we depend on. There are, though, fracture-critical threats to us which go beyond the environment, and this, too, is something that I think geodesign can very much help with. For example, we designed a fracture-critical finance system where we designed financial products such that we increased debt on our financial system to the point where a few investment banks go down, and they bring the entire global financial community down with it. It's a classic kind of catastrophic collapse of a fracture-critical system as a result of poorly designed financial products. And there was a spatial component to this, which is that the banks literally did not know where the debt lies. Many of them still don't know who's holding what debt. So it's a case of designing products that are so poorly designed they're toxic even to the people who designed them. They brought down the very banks that invented them. And they still don't know where the toxins lie. And so here, too, I think geodesign can actually help us understand the flows of money, the flows of resources spatially across the planet, and help us understand when we're putting ourselves in positions of threat, such as the ones we have encountered. And also, of course, one of the key factors in this collapse has been, as this diagram shows, the exponential increase in housing prices, in which we are now in the process of collapsing back down. Much of this has as well to do with the ways in which we have designed our own housing developments in this country, which is that in the name of efficiency, we thought that this is the way in which people want to live and should live. It's quick to build, it's easy to sell, but as it turns out, these sort of developments are incredibly fracture critical. In other words, if enough houses foreclose in communities like this, they bring all of the prices of all the other houses that are nearly identical down to the same point. And as a result, you have large percentages of the American population whose mortgages are now underwater, where the prices have collapsed. They're paying more on their mortgage than their house is now worth. And it has direct relationship to the ways in which we design monoculture-like housing developments after World War II that lacked any kind of economic resilience as well as environmental resilience. And so part of this is, how can geodesign help us design communities that are more socioeconomically diverse, more architecturally diverse, more environmentally diverse, that in fact enable us to withstand the potential collapses such as we're encountering. As well as understanding how zoning and other public policies have contributed to this. And I can go on. Our electrical grid system is fracture critical. We know that it is quite vulnerable to brownouts, blackouts. There are 6 transmission stations in the country, any one of which were attacked by terrorists could bring large sectors of the electrical grid in this country down. We have a fracture-critical transportation system, highly dependent on oil. And here again, I think one of the ways in which geodesign can help us understand are the impacts of some of these issues, such as what does it mean to have to be at or near peak oil? And how do we begin to design multimodal forms of transportation, rethinking even the need to move so many people around, so many goods around? Are there other fuel sources and other settlement patterns that make us less vulnerable to the exponential increase in price as well as the exponential decrease in the availability of inexpensive oil that we are right at in the midst of? And begin to learn. Actually, one of the things about this research is you begin to find that some of the answers to these are actually old answers, things that we used to know how to do and that we have forgotten. As Bill McKibben says, we live in this age of information and great forgetfulness. We've forgotten a lot of what we used to know and what we used to do. And so, to me, one of the interesting outcomes of some of this research may be in a process of rediscovering. And a couple areas that I think are also really affecting all of us, one of which is the fact that we have a fracture-critical food system. We are now dependent on 4 plants for a large percentage of our calories. Disease in any one of those plants could bring famine around the world. We also are in the midst, as many of us know, of kind of exponentially increasing shortage of water, and where demand is far outstripping our reserves. Again, here are research areas where geodesign can not only assess the problem, but help us understand how we design and locate and allocate resources, locate people, think about human settlements in ways that can overcome the highly efficient, highly interconnected, and highly fracture-critical systems that we've been putting in place over the last 50, 60 years, particularly although some of this goes back several hundreds of years.